Hey peeps. All right, so this is going to be a multi-part video probably. We're going to rig this astronaut. The model was built by a former student of mine, Keaton Kish. I've done some cleaning on it just to prep it for this exercise. But generally, overall, this was his model. A couple things I want to note on this, where we're going to potentially have to do multiple rigs for this character. So I'm going to point out some key points here. You've got the helmet and the belt, and these actually, outside of advanced skeleton, I'm going to make these separate rigs because there's a glass thing, and I'm going to want to rig this so this helmet will come up, and I want to be able to take the helmet off. So I'm going to make it its own special thing. And then there's the belt with the harness and these individual little lids, which they could open up. So I want to kind of set that up. So there's going to be kind of three rigs that we're going to put together: the body rig, the helmet rig, and the harness or belt rig. We're going to start with the body because it's going to be the base for everything. And I've done a few things here where I separated out these a little bit, cleaned up the eyes some. But the thing I want you to notice more than anything is that while this looks like it's a symmetrical mesh, it is not a symmetrical mesh, which Advanced Skeleton is often going to dump kind of a weird error. It'll be totally fine. Don't stress about it. So we'll see what happens. The real challenges with this piece overall is this harness, because this is a metal ring and I want this to be stiff, but I also want to be able to kind of move it around a little bit, so have maybe some creases or something happen in here. And then this area is going to have to be really solid, so I'm going to have to build additions to the fit skeleton to be able to hold these things in place, but also to be able to control them when I want to move them up and down, like, or slide it or offset it or things like that. So with all of that information there, I think probably the last bit to talk about is going to be this. When we get to the face rig, I know from experience, because when Keaton rigged this bad boy the first time, we had some tricky parts with the face. I've got a couple different solutions I'm going to try with this, and we're going to see what happens. But I think I'm actually going to include a fit joint that's going to come off to hold for the ear here. And I'm going to run another series of joints down through these microphones so that I can kind of make them move or control them a little bit to see what will happen when we get to the face rig. So it'll create kind of like a reverse ponytail, if you will, on both sides to be able to kind of hold that geo. Other than that, I'm probably going to put some structure here, here, and in the back, something in the front here, probably something here to kind of hold this tube a little bit. But other than that, I think we're going to be right on the money. Another area where we had a little bit of trouble is going to be with these particular things on the fingers. I've smoothed this geo a decent bit, and so you can see already that these things are kind of pushed through. They're not quite like where they're supposed to be on there. So I might need to clean that up a little bit, or pull the geo, grab this geo and kind of grab these vertexes in here. Kind of pull it forward some, but we'll see if that's going to be necessary or not. Alrighty. That's where we're at. So without any further ado, I'm going to get started on the fit. See you on the flip. Part 2, let's talk about getting the fit skeleton on here. So you notice I've set these up on layers over here so I can easily turn them off, because in the hierarchy they're grouped by material. So that if I were to go into substance, I would easily be able to import the model and have it line up okay. So I needed to create kind of layers so that I can hide the portions of the rig of the model I don't want to see or I don't want to rig. All right, so make sure I got my game engine checked. I'm going to use Biped Game because it's designed for that scale, and I'm going to hit import. Hey, there we go. So first things first, I'm going to work, remember, I'm going to work in front and side. Few things to keep in mind here. You know, when sometimes you come into Maya and you see this kind of like grayness, and you're like, hey, where's my grid, even though it's on, right? Well, sometimes the camera gets a little screwy with this, so you gotta tweak this side, the translation, get it under 10,000 because of the clipping planes. All right, so there's everything I want there. Okay, I've got my majors. Do the same thing over here. Probably should. All right, first things first, let's get the root where I want it. I'm gonna pull it down. And I'm gonna pull you over. Something I want you to notice how the feet aren't flat on the ground. So when you get situations like this with advanced skeleton, it can be a little tricky. Generally, I will rotate the model so that the foot is flush. So this would be a place where I might come through and say, well, do I have any room to fix it? Let's find out. Now I could either, at this point, I could either mirror this to create a new one, or I could adjust this one. Because the geo, it's a separate geo, it's not part of the same geo, so it doesn't have to be symmetrical. When it goes to paint weights, it's going to generate its own weight value. So long as it's lined up approximately in the same place as this, I think we're going to be okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, I'm comfortable with that. All right, so then now let's place the ankle. Let's see what she looks like from the front. Is it still pointing straight forward? It is. All right, I haven't broken the alignment on that one then. All right, so I think I got the leg right. All right, well, let's move let's start moving the spine up. So there's the root. There's the butt. You know, the root might be too low. So again, think about the way the model looks, not necessarily from all points of view. Like, ask yourself, where is the tuck? So really, his hips might be way the hell up here. His hips might be higher up. So his proportions, or he's got a really tall butt. Right? So, yeah, I feel like his butt is way high. He's got a long butt. So I'm gonna pull up the root, which is gonna mess up everything I've already done. But this is the advantage of, because like that feels like his navel when you look at, right? Well, actually his navel would be like right there. So he's got a really long torso. So like if that's the top of his butt, right? So he's got a big old section of hips. So I could either not worry about this, right, and leave it right here and say, okay, well, I feel like that's the hip, but maybe the root should be higher. So I'm going to pull the root up a little bit, and I'm just going to pull the hip down back to where it was. Then I'm going to recheck my alignment on my feet and everything. All right. We'll go there. We'll split the difference and see what happens. So from the root, then I'm just literally going to move these up a little bit each, keeping in mind that really the chest should be like right about here. That's my neck, so the neck's going to be much higher. Clavicle is going to be somewhere in there. And it's hard because this is like, you have to think about like where it is inside the spacesuit to be able to kind of get it to do what you want. You know, and the other portion is it too close to the back? Like, should I put this a little more in the center? Is the root feel like it's kind of the center, or is it a little too far back? So with the neck, I always like the neck to be kind of like right at the base of where the neck and the shoulders kind of come into play. And then keep in mind that the head joint should be right where the neck and the skull meet. So which is usually slightly center of the head and below the eye, near the base of the ear. With the eyes, the way I like to do the eyes is I try to kind of center them, and you can snap with verts. Sometimes that helps, but a general placement is okay. It's not, doesn't need to be the dead center of the pivot. So he modeled it with a slight bend in it. So we're going to have to, it's kind of like a mixture between an A and a T pose, which is okay. We can make that work. And notice sort of like where that elbow feels like it's right about there. And the wrist is going to pose an interesting challenge because of this ring. And when we go to bind it, there's going to definitely be some variance there. One interesting thing you can do is kind of go inside the geo. So sometimes I like to do this so you can like get a sense of where the bone is in the, like if it was an actual bone inside the body or the muscle, you know, like does it feel kind of like it's in the center of the placement? Like, oh yeah, okay. All right. And now for everybody's personal favorite, the hands. Nobody likes the hands. See how long this hand is? So when you start thinking about like, where is the actual wrist? It's actually right here. Because if this comes in, this is going to come in, here's the palm of the hand, the wrist is going to be right here. So it's a little deceptive in terms of where it actually is, and I think it's right in the front of that ring, to be honest with you. Which may or may not pose some interesting challenges. This model's definitely got some bends in it in terms of zero pose. Like say this one's bent, but mostly it's just kind of because it's in a relaxed finger. So now it's about kind of like thinking through how to get where those center points are, where the you know, one way to do this is to take this end joint and kind of V-snap it to the tip of the finger so that you always kind of know like, oh, okay, I can see that line. Just keep in mind that this is going to move, right? So it can be helpful to help with that line to kind of think it through, like where that bend in the finger is. And you usually want to work down the chain because obviously you can see once I move this one, then all of that moves. And again, I tend to work kind of like a little bit on the inside here to kind of look at the joint. Something else that sometimes helps is to kind of reduce the joint size so you can kind of get a better feel for where the fingers are. Usually right about now I get nervous and that's where I save it. It's usually, sometimes it's about usually halfway through the hand that something screws up or I break something or something crashes or whatever. So it makes me a little nervous. Now the key here is, think about this. If I didn't get that wrist placement right, then I'm going to have issues with the rest of my fingers because I won't be able to move, because if I move this, all of this is going to slide. So, my wrist might be too far over to the inside of the hand. Let's take a look at this from the top view. Because you see how it's slightly rotated? Pretty good. All right. Let's do the thumb. I always do the thumb last. The thumb is one of the trickier joints because this joint right here is going right there. So this one is going there. So this is kind of like, there's like multiple weird joints in this hand. So there's one there, and this one's further up. I find that like kind of rotating around it can be helpful. All right, so I'm ready for like a base test build at this point. So I'm going to save it just to check my fingers positions and all that kind of stuff, see where my hip is before I add in all my custom joints. So let's do a quick build. All right, we got our test build. Now let's go ahead and bind it real fast and let's see what happens. All right, so we're just gonna grab all our geo. So this is where it gets a little wonky. So this is one of the reasons why I use layers, because I can just right click on this and go select objects. And then I can select form joints. And I'm literally just going to use the basics. You know what? I use dual quaternary and I'll do 256 on this. Just to see what I get. Well, let's put him through the walker, see what it looks like. I'm assuming I'm going to get a lot of pushing and weirdnesses in here. Generally not horrible. Where this will get interesting is when I start to do selective binding, so I don't get this kind of stuff when we got to do the bind. But for now, that's fine. So then I'm going to select objects, and I'm going to unbind. And then I'm going to go all the way back up, toggle the fit, and I'm going to delete advanced skeleton. Because I'm going to add more. So that generally means my placement overall is pretty good. Yay! So now I got to start adding my hold joints. So I'm going to save a new version. And next up, we're going to add some holding joints.